Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Erin Urban. I'm a certified executive coach who focuses on helping emerging and evolving leaders remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, income, and influence. And today I'm very excited to have Vinesh joining me all the way from India. So it is evening there. And if you are tuning in to Career Coffee Chat Live, I want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for where you are tuning in around the world. As you hop on the show, come on in. Join us for a lively and engaging conversation around positive psychology and how it can make a tremendous difference for your career, specifically elevating your career. So come on in and join us. Say hi. Don't be shy. Put your comments in the chat box. Say where you're from. I'd love to give you a shout out and welcome you to the show today. Now, if you're watching this replay later, also don't be shy. Feel free to put your comments in the chat box. We will see them and we will get back to you. And for those of you listening to the podcast later, by the way, we love our subscribers, so feel free to subscribe to this on either YouTube or other social media channels or other channels like Spotify and the like. Give us a thumbs up, star rating. That is meaningful for you because it means a lot to us so we can continue to deliver this amazing content to help you elevate your career. So speaking of elevating your career, let's talk about what we'll be focusing on today. Now, Vinesh is here to share with us from his expertise as a positive psychologist and a Forbes Coaches Council member. Woohoo! So we are continuing the Forbes Coaches Council Spotlight Series. We'll be sharing about why your mindset matters and how positive psychology can help you advance your career and clear those roadblocks for effective leadership and professional development. One of the things we'll be talking about is maybe around what an agile mindset is and how can it help you achieve the life or career that you want, what key tactics you can employ to face the shifts in our lives more positively, because I don't know about you, but there's no constant accept change right now. And most importantly, what simple, easily applicable strategies can help you be more successful and achieve more peace. That's been a big theme with not only myself, but a lot of my clients is achieving more peace and fulfillment in your life and career. Now, all about Vinesh. Vinesh is an organizational development consultant who has trained and coached over 20,000 and counting individuals and consulted with over 100 and counting of the Fortune 500 companies. He helps professionals like you leverage behavior change and positive psychology for better performance and leadership. And most interestingly, at the heart of his work is one of the most remarkable human and organizational qualities called authenticity. So let's authentically give a warm welcome to Vinesh. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Erin. Thanks for having me here on the show. I think in keeping with the spirit of the show, I also went and picked up a cup of coffee.
You got coffee? He's going to be awake all night. I don't know. You know, it doesn't affect my husband at all. He can drink coffee all day and does. And
yes. Yeah, it's not just evening in India. It's 9:30 at night. So I'm done with dinner, and here I am.
So we applaud you for being on the show, and thank you so much for taking the time and sharing this space with us and sharing your insights about positive psychology. Now, I'm super nosy, and I love to learn from my guests about what got you into positive psychology? Why that focus? What was the catalyst?
So since this is a career coffee chat, I think I probably should say this. I have an undergrad degree in mechanical engineering. So, one of the things that a lot of people are trying to do with their careers is to find the right thing, find, what suits them best, where they're going to be happy and so on. So I sort of went through the journey myself, and it's specifically in the urban, part of India, in the big cities, becoming an engineer or a doctor is, at least for a long time, was the two big things to do. And I was sort of victim of that. So like my brother's an engineer, my sister-in-law's an engineer. So that was sort of the natural next thing for me to do. So I did engineering, and then I sort of realized, I used to wait for exams to get over and, go to this library and read psychology books. But it never surprises you that you can sort of make a living out of it, and you can actually make a career out of it, and so on. So after I graduated, I worked for a year or a year and a half as an engineer, and I used to work in the south of France in this place called Toulouse for some time, and then in Bangalore, and then I shifted tracks, and I moved into areas that interested me. So I started with, so suddenly my degree didn't mean anything anymore because I was suddenly naked. So I started training on something which I thought I was good at, which is language, and then I moved on to I got a number of certifications. By then, I'd done a number of programs on NLP, okay, neuro linguistic
Mm-hmm.
programming. And basically, what happened in NLP, I'm sure you know about it, but for the audience here who might think it's natural language processing, because we have a lot of tech people nowadays. So NLP stands for neuro linguistic programming, and these two guys, John Grinder and Richard Bandler, they studied excellence, and they studied what's going well, and they sort of expanded on that. So they essentially studied these three therapists, Virginia Satir, Fritz Perls, and Milton Erickson. And they said, here are three therapists who are producing results. Let's see what they're doing right. And that really is what became NLP. So later when I did a master's in the University of Missouri, there was positive psychology as one of the subjects, and then I decided to specialize on it because that's exactly what NLP was about, and that's exactly what also I think it also sort of came to me a little more naturally out of instinct.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't obviously know there was a term for it, but then later I also realized that it was called positive psychology, and
Yeah.
looking at what's going well and gratitude, or what you like to call it.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people in the US, not everybody, but some people like to connect mindfulness with positive psychology and think that they're almost one and the same. While they do share some characteristics, there's a difference because positive psychology, as you mentioned, focuses on what is going well, the science of success, if you will, and then how that relates to our behaviors, specifically our mental patterns, etc. So what's going on there and what can we control to shift the narrative, if you will, to bring about the circumstances that we want versus what we don't want, which
Mhm.
interestingly, as human beings, we tend to focus a lot on what we don't want.
Right. Right. So, one of the well-known positive psychologists, Robert Biswas Dana, and his dad, Ed Dana. So, Robert talks about mindfulness as the Scarlett Johansson of positive psychology, or So nobody questions mindfulness, right? Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
say, "Oh, mindfulness, don't do it. It's not the right thing." But Robert Biswas Dan has been talking about this idea, saying that it's great to be mindful. I mean, it's great to be mindful as opposed to mindless, right? So, in that sense, it's great to be mindful all the time. But there's real value in also letting yourself drift. There's real value in just opening your window and staring out of the window or at the sky for extended periods. There's real value in being lost in something that you're doing, you
Mm-hmm.
know uh, the whole phenomenon of flow, which is very significant in positive psychology. So there's real value in it. So while mindfulness is something that you can use and tap into to make better decisions, to sort of enjoy where you are, I think it's also a good idea. In fact, one of the ways for you to, since this is a career coffee chat, for you to find out if a field is something that you like or enjoy, and if that's what you'd like to do, is to see how often you can hit that state of flow. How often can
Hmm.
you sort of get lost in what you're doing?
All
And if
right.
that never happens, if you're always on the watch, if you're always, the classic corporate employee who's watching the clock, he's definitely not lost in, or engrossed in what he's saying, in what he's doing. He's not experiencing flow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good way to look at it, is to look at mindfulness as well as flow, as well as XYZ, as different tools, and pick out and use the ones that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's what I think about what you just said.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that because there is a distinction. It's important to understand that. And then I don't think people understand what the benefits are to positive psychology. Like, why should I even care? Is a lot of
Hmm.
people, I do this mindfulness, I do yoga, or I do meditation, or I have a gratitude practice. Well, those
Yeah.
are great tools. What does positive psychology have to do with a better results in your career, etc.? What are your thoughts?
Well, so I must say this. Once I was on this trip, and had a layover at Amsterdam, at Schiphol Airport, and there's this the guy at at immigration. He was checking me, and he said, "What do you do?" And I told him what I do, and he said, "So, is there something called negative psychology?" And let's
That's
clarify
great.
that there is something called negative psychology. And the reason I'm saying this is, so negative psychology is studying things like stress, studying the negative emotions,
Mhm.
studying breakdown, studying depression, and so on. And there's a sense, especially when people look at it, read that word positive psychology, a psychologist, and look at a lot of the posts that are being put out there on social media, to sort of think you're just a positive person. In
Mm.
fact, what positive psychology is doing is studying what's going well. Okay, so maybe a really simple thing, like this David Cooper writer, who studied what was going well, in appreciative inquiry. And he looked at one hotel which is doing everything well, and he looked at another hotel, and he sort of brought the best practices from one place to the other. So that's positive psychology, right?
Yeah.
So I think why it's important, why it's significant is, all too often we get carried away by what's not going well and what's wrong. So even if you
We
decide to buy,
focus on what we don't want, right?
exactly, we focus on what you don't want, right? So even if you want to buy, if you want to go on Amazon and buy a mobile phone, a watch, a book, whatever, so you're going to go to the reviews, and a very highly rated product, the reviews are like 4.5, but you still want to go and read those
You want to look at those one
single
star.
stars. Yes,
Yeah.
you want to read those single stars, you want to read those double stars. And of course there's going to be negative feedback.
Mhm.
There are always people out there who hate everything. uh, Also, I must say that the whole idea of positive psychology is, it's not just about happiness, but it is about happiness, but it's not just about that. The Greek word, the ancient Greek word for a good life, eudaimonia,
Hmm.
is different from happiness in that it also takes into consideration hard work. It takes into consideration
Mhm.
pain. It takes into consideration, just striving to achieve something which is just a little beyond your reach.
Hmm.
And when you do that, you experience something called eudaimonia, which is even bigger than happiness.
Hmm.
Which is not
It's
which
almost
is
like
not
your
really,
euphoria.
well, yeah, kind of euphoria.
Mhm.
But why that matters is, it respects the fact that there could be pain, there could be hardship, there could be difficult times. And that doesn't, it's not as if positive psychology discounts that and says,
Right, right.
let's throw this out of the window, because exercises like, like the gratitude list, uh, could easily make somebody think that we're only looking at what's going well, and we're not
Or
sort of,
ignoring. Yeah.
yeah, pushing
Right.
stuff under the carpet.
I want to say hi to Mariama tuning in from YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. And as you hop on the show, please say hi, say where you're from. And if you have any questions, drop it in the chat. We'd love to answer your questions. That's what we're here for. We're here for you. So yeah, I really that really resonates with me because I do feel like because of the term positive, that people feel like, oh, okay, positive psychology. That's when you stick your head in the sand and ignore, well,
Right,
life. It's like, no, that's not what it's about at all. In fact,
right,
it's understanding that our life process, our career process involves all things. And out of those things, what's going well, what's working for you, where is your energy, what lights you up? Can you follow that? Can you follow that path? And like I tell people when they're thinking about career clarity, for example,
right.
your ideal next best step is the intersection of your strengths, interests, and expertise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mention your ideal next best step is the intersection where it drains you and you're miserable. That's where you want to go away. You want to shift away from that. We're
Right.
not saying that, oh, it doesn't exist. Just be mindful and grateful and be zen today. No,
Mhm.
that's not the point. That doesn't make it go away. Let's see
Right.
what we can learn from the data that we have to inform a better decision. So we're
Mm-hmm.
looking about what is positive, what is the positive data points, connecting those dots based on whatever kind of goal that you have. If I'm to break that down, is that fair approximation?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think it's while you break that down, maybe that's what you just said is an important piece. There are loads of books out there which tell you all sorts of things about what's important, what's the right thing to do, why it matters, and so on. But the amount of the book which focuses on exactly what to do. So I've also been sort of I have a podcast and I've been interviewing people just like this, and one of the things I asked them was about what lessons they learned in life and how somebody else could do the same thing. So
Fantastic.
my podcast is called the Positive Behavior Podcast.
I want to be on your podcast.
Oh yes, thanks for the shout out.
Now I've got him on public. Now we got him on live. He has to say yes, all right?
This is so Erin. So there's yeah. So when you ask people like what should you do? What should you do to be happy? They're gonna tell you all sorts of things like focus on what's important. Don't let what matters in your life be at the mercy of things that don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the brighter side, and so on and so forth. But very few of them actually end up telling you, just like the books, actually end up telling you exactly what to do.
Right.
So maybe one of the good ways to, to put positive psychology into practice is to be able to read a book or watch a talk and pull out those things which are actual behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because this is a session on mindset change towards the right career, and the way to change a mindset is through behavior, because it's a mental stand that you take for yourself. And one of the books that really became popular over the last 10 years is the growth mindset by Carol Dweck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I really like about the book, and I would imagine a lot of people like about it, is that she talks about how she herself had a fixed mindset and she was able to change it.
Mm-hmm.
So a mindset is a stand that you choose. It's a club. It's a club that you
It
create and you
is.
become the member of.
Right. Oh, this is me, and you just have to get used to me. That's
Exactly.
that's fixed
Exactly.
mindset. Yeah. I want to say hi to Vanessa Elder tuning in from Houston. Good to see you, Vanessa, this morning, or for where you are tuning in from the world, be afternoon or evening or middle of the night. I don't know. So yeah, I mean it's like justifying. This is me. Get used to it. And what's interesting though, I would like to really briefly, if that's okay, tie that back to authenticity because we have some very interesting behaviors going on right now. We have
Right.
this authenticity movement, which I think is fantastic. Yes, absolutely. We need to have more DE&I, which is a part of that, accepting people as they are as humans and embracing diverse, not only, well, it's not, it's just, here's the thing DE&I is not just the color of your skin. Okay, it's where you come
Right.
from. It's your belief structure. It's your religious structure. It's what you eat. It's what you
Right.
think. There's a host of just a very deep and complex strata here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
being able to accept that. And also know that in every culture you go into, you live and work and play, there are a certain set of rules.
Right.
So what I'm seeing now is, okay, we have these certain set of rules or whatever culture you happen to be operating in that maybe this person doesn't like.
Right.
You're like, well, I'm just authentically rude. So I'm going to be my authentic self and I'm just going to be rude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, does that really work? No, I don't think so.
Yes. Now that you brought that up, let me just say a couple of things about that. Now, yes. So just to sort out the DNI part of it, I'm not the DNI expert, but I keep telling organizations, and I've also been invited a couple of times to be on a Women's Day panel or on a panel discussion where this happened to come onto the table for discussion. So I think, the day when this will really come to life is when companies stop, announcing news like General Motors has the first female CEO. So what?
Right. I mean,
You
it
never
should
say,
be,
never
it should
say
be
Google
normal.
Google has a third male CEO, or whatever. So it's just a given. And I think when it becomes a given, it really is put to, what should I say? That's when the tire meets the road, and it's coming to life.
Right.
The other thing about um, people's behavior and how you're going to use this, the authenticity part of it, at every instant you sort of have a choice. Okay, like for example, if you just leave everybody out, if you just take yourself, and if you say my approach to authenticity is to be genuine, forget about others, forget about social media, just myself. So you have a choice almost every single day, every hour. Like for example, I logged on a few minutes ago, and just for the audience here, there was a charming moment before we started, when Erin told me that, look, I'm going to start talking, and then you're going to be there, you're going to wait, and then I'm going to bring you in. Now, does that mean both of us are being inauthentic, and that we're not being authentic enough? So at each stage, I think you have a choice to say, oh yes, I did call you when you probably actually didn't, or you called somebody and their line was busy, and you say, oh yes, I called you and your line was busy, I called you twice but you just called once. So one of the things is about lying to yourself, lying
Mm-hmm.
to other
Mm-hmm.
people, and you always have a choice to tell the truth. Now I think with Jordan Peterson's recent book, 12 Rules for Life, and one of the rules is to always tell the truth. And like you said, the other side of that is, am I going to, if I meet a difficult client, say, oh my God, you're such a difficult client? Am I going to say that? Because we're
Well,
not
we got
saying
a choice not to say things too. We don't
correct.
have to say
You don't
everything.
have to say it. Yeah. So a good way to look at authenticity, because these two extreme sides makes it sort of difficult to work with, right? A
Mm-hmm.
good way to look at it is to say, these are the things that I stand for. These are my values. Okay, forget about what Jordan Peterson says. My value is being honest. My value is I will do work that aligns with what I stand for.
Mm-hmm.
My values are I'm going to always be there for the people who are close to me, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just making up these random things. But once you define that for yourself, once you say that this is really me and this is what I bring onto the table, this is what I stand for, then you have a sort of metric. Then you can say,
Right.
now today I've been authentic or I've not been authentic, and it's really not a game with or against anybody else. It's just with yourself.
Right. We don't have to be defiantly authentic.
Correct.
That's not necessary. I'd
Hmm.
like to circle back to the positive psychology and really focus on a part of it that resonated with me, specifically around career growth, elevating your career, seeing opportunities and moving forward, capitalize on momentum. And one
Hmm.
of that is positive psychology looks at what's going well.
Right.
So clearly, this has a lot to do with how one might grow in one's career if you're
Hmm.
leveraging what's going well for you. Can
Hmm.
you share a little bit about what maybe that structure looks like, or is there some steps, tips, or easily applicable just ahas that people can
Hmm.
latch onto?
Yeah, sure. So maybe one of the things to do, first of all, just to carry on the story from authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
is to decide and choose things which you stand for. So don't take up a job because it looks good on paper, because it's a big brand, and it's
Mm-hmm.
great to work for. Let me not name somebody, any company, but it's great to work for the big four companies in the world or whatever. So I think that's the first thing, is to choose something, because if you're not doing that, it's bad enough to be able to choose something and end up with the wrong thing. It's even worse to be able to choose something which wasn't even your choice. you know so
Right.
that's really, I think, the first step, to pick something out of your own uh, decision and not because of somebody else, or because someone else wants you to be the CEO of a certain company and so on.
Mm.
The other thing is, since we're talking about positive psychology, one of the definitions, or one of the fundamentals of positive psychology is this concept called PERMA. Okay, PERMA. So P stands for positive emotions. So pick a job where you get to experience more positive emotions. And if you're a sales guy and you hate meeting people, and what you really look forward to are the weekends and the evenings, then in your work life you're hardly experiencing any positive emotions, because every day you're going to be like, oh, I have to go meet these people and people again, and then I come back and there are people at home. So that's the first thing to
And you really like data and you want to dive into the metrics, but you don't want to make the phone call. That's a dead ringer that you might want to consider being a data analyst instead.
Right. So that's the first thing, positive emotions. The second thing is engagement. So we spoke about flow. If there's, look at those times when you were doing something and you just lost track of time. You were lost in the activity. If you can pick things around that, I think that will be a great job for you. That will be a great way for you to find the right thing for you to do. The next thing is our relationships. So I think we are all, creatures, social creatures. So we love meeting people. I often joke that even the introverts out there, they love meeting other introverts and sharing the introverted stories. So it's
true.
It's a good idea to build relationships, and the kind of relationships that you want. Right. And if you can get into a job that offers that, that'll be a great thing. So that's PER. M stands for meaning. So meaning essentially means, is this job making sense? Are you sort of aligned to what you're doing?
Right.
There's this whole idea called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance essentially means, it first came out in 1957, where the American social psychologist Leon Festinger, he wrote this book called Cognitive Dissonance. But what it really means is your beliefs and what you stand for and your behavior every day is in conflict.
Right.
So you just hate smoking. Your dad died of smoking, so you're not a supporter of tobacco, but you're a Philip Morris salesperson. So that sort of thing is cognitive dissonance. So if you can avoid that, if you can do a job which is aligned with what you stand for, what you believe in, I think that will straight away bring in a lot of meaning. So that's PRM. And the last one, A, is accomplishment. Everybody loves doing well at something. Even those people who say, oh, I'm tired of the corporate world, I want to go sit in the Himalayas and meditate, they're trying to accomplish something. Maybe that's peace of mind. They're just trying to, get enlightened, whatever. So accomplishment is something that comes to us naturally. We love it. We enjoy it. I often tell people who I coach who feel they're sort of done with the corporate world, I think with the right kind of mentoring and the support and the coaching, if they'd sort of course corrected a bit, they would have had a blast and enjoyed doing what they were doing. So maybe this PERMA model, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning and accomplishment, is a good way, or a good compass for you to sort of keep in mind while you're scouting around for the right job.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And for anybody tuning in that has questions about clarity, finding your next position, or maybe you're stuck thinking about something. Sometimes we get stuck in the cycle of decisions, and I'm not sure, we always want the best possible outcome. If I don't pick the perfect decision, it might not come out. And, sometimes we get stuck in that cycle, or we're not really sure about, what do I even do to find out what I'm good at? That happens a lot, particularly for those people who've fallen victim to the open door syndrome. You just walk through one open door and the next open door and the next open door. One day you wake up and you look around and go, what am I even doing here?
Right.
Where am I at? Who am I? And then we have to really break it down and understand what our values are, what our priorities are, what gives us energy. So when you talk about being able to get in the state of flow, and most importantly, that positive emotions. I
Hmm.
tend to link that to the energy you get or you're giving during the day.
Right.
Now, that's actual energy. Like you can feel it. At the end of the day,
Hmm.
if you're exhausted and drained, you don't have energy for your family, you don't even enjoy things you normally enjoy,
Hmm.
one, you might be headed towards burnout, but two, most importantly, you're doing something you're not aligned with. You have that dissonance. You're not aligned. You're in an area that's draining your strengths, so you're not getting the positive emotions.
Hmm.
You're probably not seeing as much accomplishment as you would like. And there's a whole host of things going on there. So
Right.
it's important to be in a space where most of the time you're receiving that energy based on your natural work style. And everybody's is different, and that's fine. By the way, not everybody has to be the same. That's fixed mindset. Everybody has to be like me.
Hmm.
No, everybody's different, and it's good.
Right.
Yeah, and finding that space where you can show up more authentically, more
Hmm.
aligned, with more energy, and at the end of the day, at least, if not striking a neutral balance, at least be ideally in the net positive. You're coming home,
True. True.
or logging off. The day of remote work now, we're not just going home, we're logging off, whatever that is for some of you. Stop working late.
Mm.
So, what are your thoughts, Vinesh? We covered a lot of territory in a really short period of time. I like where we've come so far. Is there anything else that you want to share with the folks tuning in now and later about how you help people achieve
Yeah,
success?
just related to all sorts of things went through my mind as I was listening to your animated description of that. So you spoke about values, and I think that's another sort of internal compass to use. So what really matters to you in a job? And I've asked this to a lot of people, and they'll typically say something like money. I have to learn a lot. And you ask them more questions. Why is money important? And they say they have to buy something, get a house, get a mansion, get a car, whatever. Why is that
Mhm.
important? They want to feel comfortable. They want to feel secure. Now, in the end, your values are really emotions. So if you can identify what your emotions are. I mean, I'm sure you as a coach, you've done this in coaching sessions, helping people nail down their values. That's a good way for you to that's a good metric for you to use to find what you really like to do in life. So if your top emotions, I have this written down all over the place with I'm going to just read out something from one of my recent coaching sessions, which I can afford to do because I'm not going to tell you the name of the person. So here's what this person likes. What he finally likes is he likes to be independent. He likes to be happy. He likes celebration, the feeling of celebration. He
Mhm.
likes to have his own space, and he likes to experience motivation. He likes to be thrilled. Now, if
Mm.
you say these are your top five values, then it's easy for you to take decisions. So if you're working and you get a job offer, which you're going to straight away check, is this going to make me feel more motivated? Is this going to make me feel thrilled? Am I going to get a sense of adventure, whatever your values are?
Right.
If it doesn't, then you shouldn't take it up. If it does, then
Mhm.
you should take it up. Or if you have not even changing a job, but within your job, you have an offshore opportunity where you get to travel. Now, is this going to keep you more stressed than relaxed? And being
Right.
relaxed and peaceful and calm
What's the
confident.
balance? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, that's I think one of the ways. Here's another interesting thought, especially about on the question of careers.
Mhm.
We often discount things which surround a job,
Hmm.
and let's also just remind ourselves, and I want to sort of caution the audience here. This whole idea of enjoying work is a pretty recent phenomenon. It's just been there for the past couple of years.
That's true. I'm laughing because I have an idea. Yeah, go ahead.
So work was not supposed to be fun. It was supposed that's why it's called work. It's supposed to be hard. You work and then you rest on the weekend, you rest on Sunday or whatever. So it was supposed to be like that. So this whole phenomenon of finding your calling, finding your passion, enjoying work, being a round peg in a round hole, this is a pretty recent phenomenon. It's just like, during the Romantic period from 1800 to 1850, roughly around that time when it started, the whole idea of finding your ideal life partner,
That
finding
was
finding
pretty
one.
revolutionary too. Yeah. because up to that point, you didn't really get a choice.
Correct.
It's through necessity. It was necessity.
Right.
Not
So you found a life partner to get married or to just, for convenience. But that sort of changed the whole thing through paintings and writing. And there are a lot of people who wrote these happily ever after stories and, Prince Charming coming and knocking you off your feet and getting married. So this exact thing happened at work when, we started saying that I've got to enjoy work. I've got to really go into office and love what I do and so on. So take this with a pinch of salt and do look at other things which surround the jobs. You might be an IT, an IT programmer, but maybe what you really hate is traveling. So I live in a big city called Bangalore. There's a lot of traffic. People are loving it now because they're getting to work from home because of the pandemic. And there are a lot of my clients who are struggling with this whole idea of getting people back to office, and people don't want to come back to office, right? So
we're in the middle of that right here in the U.S. We're in the middle of this, and it's called the Great Resignation.
Right. So that's an important thing to look at that. So, earlier when I was doing a lot of hardcore consulting as part of a consulting firm, I used to be traveling constantly. There's this movie, If It's Tuesday, This Must Be Belgium. It was really like that. So I would go to these hotels and ask people, especially in the front office, when I'm taking a break, when I'm walking around, so what do you like about working here? And people have told me all sorts of things. But a number of people have said they love standing in this nice 5-star hotel at the front desk and dressing well and looking good and being there for people who walked in. So sometimes it could be things like dressing up well. Sometimes it could be things like travel. Sometimes you just like the name of the company. It just sounds good to work in Google. Forget about what you do there. It just sounds good.
It sounds good. And it looks good on your resume.
It looks good on your resume. So I think look at all those things which surround a job, and that's going to give you useful clues in terms of what you might like, and what you might not like. What's a good job for you?
And what's your emotional attachment to those ancillary items? Is a part of the whole matrix, because a lot of times, I'm with you on this notion. I get a lot of I want to find my passion. I want to find my dream job. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Okay, right. So let's talk about passion. First of all, passion, if you are actually in an area of passion, you're emotionally invested to a significant degree in your current adventure. Right. There is some pros and cons to that. It requires a great deal of discernment and restraint, because as a person who has been there and is still there, I love what I do. This is an area of my passion. I burned out at least twice, almost 3 times, because of the passion, because it was so easy for me to just keep working until 10:30, 11 o'clock, midnight. Mm-hmm. No, it's not sustainable. I was also missing the other areas of my life, which I'm also as a high value for me. So the boss of me, was making me ignore my values because I'm so passionate with this one area. So it's a double-edged sword. So we have to be careful here. And 2, I would argue to say that passion is not required for you to have a lot of fulfillment in your career. It's just not. Okay. We're really looking at something that at the end of the day, you feel pretty good about it. You don't feel miserable, and you don't dread going to work the next day. That's what we're looking for here. We're looking for this. And I'm sure it's backwards on the screen, maybe balance.
Right.
I think it's a really cool thing is that I uncovered this because we're now packing down our townhome in Houston, putting it on the market, that sort of thing. There's a lot going on. So I had these Zen cards, and I was like, oh, cool. These are neat. So, and I found this one, and I was like, this means a lot to me, because it's really interesting. People also have interesting ideas about what they need to be happy. And I would argue to say, as a coach, if I were to boil down all the coaching conversations and really condense them, it comes out to a few things, really. Balance and peace.
Right.
That's what people need. You really need balance and peace. And money facilitates this. If you hear that, I need to make more money. Okay, why? Why do you need to make more money? What's out of balance? What's not peaceful for you? How do you need to get there? And it may not need money per se, right? So, I mean, we attach things, but we really need to distill it down. And I like this balance card. It says the center is not always a point of balance.
Right.
When you find that place where balance is achieved, peace will result in all situations. There is no conflict, where everything rests without strain. That's balance. Isn't that cool?
Nice.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. So, what are your thoughts about what I shared, Vinesh?
So yeah, a couple of things. One is there is this sense. I mean, it's really nice to hear you say I almost burnt out twice, and so on. So there's this one school of thought which says you have to sort of let's just call this. I'm just going to call this the talk school of thought, which says if you want to do something, you have to sort of stand for it, you have to represent it, you have to be there. So if you're going to be a lifestyle coach, so you better have an amazing lifestyle yourself. If you're going to be a relationship coach, then you better be in a good relationship, and that's that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other side, maybe I should just call this impacting people's lives or just making a difference, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the making a difference approach. So it doesn't matter if you're a relationship coach and you're having a bad relationship or going through your third divorce or whatever. If you can provide value and make a difference in somebody else's life, I think that's good enough. So some years ago, I gave a talk to a group of doctors for this. Actually, happens to be an American drug company, and it's a pediatric drug. So there were pediatricians and there were gynecologists as well in the
Mm-hmm.
room. So one of the raging debates was there were women gynecologists who were saying, a man who's a gynecologist would never know what it's like to have a child, and he can say all sorts of things about when the pain's going to start and what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen, but it's
He
just
doesn't
theoretical.
know. He doesn't have experience, so it's experiential. Yeah.
Exactly, it's
Mm-hmm.
experiential. So these people were really coming from that first, the walk the talk school of
Mm-hmm.
thought that I mentioned, because then a lot of the men out there who were gynecologists said, "So you're saying if you have to be an oncologist, you have to have first had cancer, and then recovered, and only then you can be an oncologist." So there are these two sides, and I think balance in terms of a career is to pick something. It's great to pick something that you stand for and that
Mm-hmm.
you represent effortlessly, and I think that's a good place to be. In the absence of that, it's also good enough if you can do something and make a difference to your organization, to your team, contribute, while it gives you the luxury and the money and whatever else it offers. Sometimes it's just the flexibility of staying in another country
Mm-hmm.
because you've got a job there. As long as it does that, I think that's good enough. I think that's a good way to look at balance in my view.
Right. And that's a great insight. Really, thank you for sharing that. And also, thank you for your other wisdom, your points, your insights. I like the steps that you provided. PERMA is what it was. PERMA. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that was very insightful. And for those of you tuning in later to either the live show or the podcast, feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have questions. We're here to help. That's what we exist for, after all, is to make a positive impact on your life.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, whether we walk the talk or whether we're just knowledgeable, I think their
Hmm.
knowledge has such a huge value. And maybe I'm just saying that because I'm a nerd and I like to learn things.
Hmm.
However, I feel that knowledge is very helpful too. So you don't necessarily have to have, I don't know, had an escalated situation at work of a specific variety in order to coach somebody through it, in other words, right? So if that makes sense. So the knowledge helps tremendously. So we're your knowledge guys and coaches, so reach out to us. And it's a deep pleasure to see all of you that's tuning in today. And it's a deep pleasure to have you on the show, Vanessa. I'm just really happy to have you here. So thank you for sharing your evening with us and your coffee. And he's not going to sleep for the rest of the night. It's all our fault. But
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for having me over. So do you have any other questions before we wrap up?
I don't have any more questions. But if somebody does have questions after the show, then we'll be happy to answer that. We can see those posts and we'll be notified and we'll be happy to
So
answer any
I'm just
questions.
looking at I'm just looking at something here, and I want to probably just share this last thing before we wrap up.
Sure.
Uh, where we often when we're talking about a career, we try to find the right thing. We try to see what's aligned with what I like and those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
But here's an interesting idea. There are a lot of things which you can pick, which aren't domain or specific to a particular industry or a kind of job. So, for example, hard work. Hard work is going to be useful whether you work in Amazon or Google or DHL or wherever, or if you're just running your own show. Likability and things like sticking to your promises. Like some time ago, Jeff Bezos said, some things will always work. Customers will always want things fast. They're never going to say, "Oh God, this parcel reached here on time." How ridiculous. So
Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Yeah.
So some things which just work universally. So if you have to pick something to work on, if you're still uncertain what's the right job for you, what's a good career option, pick things like being able to work hard, pick things like being able to deliver or stick to your promises, getting along with people who aren't like you, pick things like likability, because those are qualities if you build, you'd be able to sort of breeze through a lot of career options and the great allied or behavioral skills which lead to a satisfying and fulfilling career. Yeah.
Right. You touched on something, and it's definitely a really good note to wrap up our show today. I study success as well because that's what I do. I'm a career advancement coach. That's what I do. So in order to do that well, I study success. And really, if you want to boil down the most effective success strategies in the U.S. particularly, it really is around interpersonal relationships and how you handle it, and EQ or EI, and emotional intelligence. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with you being perfect at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily have to do with you volunteering for everything and not saying no. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily have anything to do with you being an overachiever. It doesn't have anything to do with how awesome you are at the technical nuances of your job. It has a lot more to do with those interpersonal, relationship, EI capabilities. Now, I'm not saying that we should ignore our skills and abilities. And again, in all things,
Absolutely. It's like language proficiency. So if you can speak well, if you have great language proficiency, you can be a technical expert. You can work in a bank. It's going to help you in a number of areas. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have a very interesting comment here before we wrap up the show. He says, "What do you think of this concept?"
About Ikigai?
Yeah, Ikigai.
So here's what I think. I think Ikigai became a bit of a buzzword some time ago. And one of the things, I can tell you what I think about it. One of the things I like about it is it's looked at different dimensions and said, if these two overlap, that's your passion. If these two overlap, that's your profession. That's a good thing to find, and so on. But the challenge I noticed with a lot of people is that real life doesn't necessarily play out like that.
Right.
And you can't say, I'm going to take my passion and I'm going to overlap it with my, with my dreams, and that becomes, so that those Venn diagrams are a rather simplistic way of reducing the issue. I think Ikigai is great. The main thing is for you to be able to take it and customize it to your life and your life situation and your, the stage of your career you're in and what you really like to do and those sort of things.
Yeah, I prefer, instead of Ikigai, is a unsexy, boring list. And that list has two categories. And one category is the task and situations that you get energy from, that excites you get energy from. And the other list is those tasks and situations that drain you. You don't look forward to them. You hate them. They're just
Right.
Have those lists and let that inform your decisions, because when that open door shows up, instead of just walking through it, you can say, okay,
Hmm.
now is this opportunity more largely in the drainer section or the energy giver section? That
Right.
will just, and it's not sexy, it's just a list, and it's super
Mm.
helpful.
Right.
And we don't
But
have to do an ikigai or a Venn diagram or a data analysis, and we don't even have to, shockingly, take a work style analysis.
yeah, that's good. That just reminds me, Erin. This is something that I've urged a lot of people in B schools to do, as well as people who are wondering what to do next. Early career professionals. It's what I call the interview, where you go talk to at least 10 people who are doing the kind of job that you'd like to get into.
Yes.
There were a lot of these things which I think Barack Obama was in many of them, where they interviewed him and said, "What's it like being the president? What's it like in the White House? Do they wake you up in the middle of the night? Do you have to come out in your pajamas? And do you have to, So people seem to know what it's like to live in the White House and they seem to know much more about what it's like to be the president than what it's like to do their next jobs, right?
Mm.
So it's a great idea for you to go talk to people, reach out to people on LinkedIn, reach out to people online, interview them, take them out for dinner, and ask them, what do you do at work? What happens from morning till evening? When do you lose sleep at work? What's a dry day like? What's a tough day like? Uh, what do you really enjoy about doing it? Because we often get to see just the highlights, and we think that's the whole field. You look at somebody and you say, "Oh wow, what an actor! I see him on screen, and I want to become a Hollywood star." But you discount,
It's hard.
right? You discount
A lot of hard work.
waking up at 4 in the morning to get a sunrise shot, or something like that. So it's a
You
great
just count the millions of auditions and the millions of rejections, and I mean, I forget how many times Jim Carrey was rejected before he became a Hollywood star. So I mean, it's just like, yeah, you don't see that side of it. We call those
Yeah, I mean, I
informational
haven't,
interviews.
I haven't worked with any Hollywood star. That was just an example. But the point is that it's great to talk to people who are doing the job to get an inside view of what it's like before you actually sign up for it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great way to wrap up the show. Thank you again, Vinesh. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been a deep
All right.
pleasure having you on the show. Have a deep pleasure here being present with all of you. And until next time, my friends, keep elevating.